It does.
And clearly, an 8% drop in one-time mail is a meaningful impact. And the headlines from across the country that the committee has collected show how widespread these delays are. Would you agree that there are delays presently?
There are delays, yes.
Thank you. I know in my own district, which relies heavily on the mail because we cannot drive to different big boxes or other locations, being an island, Leonida Blake. Her Cigna prescriptions usually take 3 to 5 days, have taken 2 weeks. Shannon DeSig, who runs a small retail store on St. John, usually 10 days max for priority, which is kind of long for priority, but we are an island, and now takes weeks. Ivan Jacobs, priority mail typically takes 4 days, it's now taking 12 days. Sherilyn Stapleton, summer college program items have disappeared. It goes on and on and on. Now, in 39 USC section 3661-B provides, when the Postal Service determines that there should be a change in the nature of postal services, which generally affects service on a nationwide or substantially nationwide basis, it shall submit a proposal within a reasonable time prior to the effective date of such proposal to the Postal Regulatory Commission, PRC, requesting an advisory opinion on the change. Now, you have agreed with me in previous questions that this has been a change that has substantial nationwide basis. It generally affects postal services, and that it is a change in nature of postal service, which generally affects service on a nationwide substantial basis. Have you, sir, submitted a request for an advisory opinion to the Postal Regulatory Commission?
A request for an advisory opinion on asking the organization to adhere to their transportation schedules is not required.
I didn't ask you about the transportation schedules. I
That's
asked you,
That's the only change that
if I may have finish my statement, sir. I'll let you finish yours. That when a postal service determines there should be a change in the nature of postal services, which generally affects service on a nationwide or substantially nationwide basis, the changes that have occurred have had a meaningful impact on service. One, under Buchanan versus U.S. Postal Service, the 3 factors for legal requirements are a meaningful impact on service, a change that must be in the nature of postal services, and a change which would, quote, affect a broad geographic area. Is that not the case?
The gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman may answer.
thank you. The change that was made
In this
was
case,
not expected
is a
to have
fake.
the impact it had for the duration of the period.
His
It had.
job is to
It
do
also
this.
did not contribute to 10 and 12 and 2-week delays. Mail that was processed that didn't make it on the truck would have gone on the next truck. If you looked at that chart, you would see that as soon as we went into day +1, we were back up into the 90% time. There are other factors that are contributing to excessive delays throughout the country. It is one of those.
Yes, COVID,
Yes, ma'am.
as well as others. And the fact that the determination impact after that has happened to this country really
The gentlelady's
questions
time has
religious
expired.
expertise.
We are working very, very hard across the whole country to get all the mail on the truck. And we're seeing rapid recovery, and we will, once this is put back in balance, we will have a better system and a much more cost-effective system.
The Congresswoman's time has expired. Congressmember Gomez, you are now recognized Vice Chair of the committee, Congressman Gomez.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I want to focus on the change that you
Even that glare is
take
really
credit for,
bad.
which is making sure that the trucks have gone out on time. So I'm going to read a series of questions. Most of them at the beginning are yes, no. You instituted a change to sharply reduce extra mail delivery trips by, quote, requiring trucks to run on time and on schedule, correct?
Yes, sir.
And referring to this new delivery schedule, you told the Senate, quote, our production processing within the plants was not fully aligned with the established schedule, but we had some delays in mail, correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. DeJoy, when precisely did you implement the change requiring the trucks to leave on time? The date?
the second week, I think, second week of July.
Second week of July. Thank you, sir. So you told the Senate that the U.S. Postal Service did an analysis showing these changes theoretically would mean, quote, all late deliveries would have been improved. Then you told Senator Rosen that didn't happen, quote, for a variety of reasons. Then you continued, quote, the analysis we did would show that we would improve service to every constituent. Can you briefly describe the variety of reasons that did not happen?
You confused me.
Basically, the fact that you said that this would actually improve by the delivery of mail on time, you said that would happen. And then later on, you said, for a variety of reasons, that did not happen. What are those variety of reasons?
So this will improve service and reduce cost substantially. And it will also be the fundamental baseline of operation for, for postal service.
Mr. DeJoy, I'm going to reclaim my time. I'm asking you specifically, because you said this in the beginning of your testimony. You said for a variety of reasons.
So a variety of reasons has to do why mail delivery is down across the nation. With regard to this specific change, the production schedules within the plants were not aligned with the transportation schedules going between the plants. That was there's about 10% of the mail was not aligned. The production plants were getting done late, and the trucks were leaving. This was not a mandate that every truck leaves on time. We still have a significant amount of trucks that run delay and a significant amount of extra trips. Judgments were made at each individual plant that provided for transitional issues in doing it. We will get this back. We're working it very hard, and it will be a successful endeavor for the United States Postal Service.
Well, that's what we're hoping. Mr. DeJoy, you couldn't make this commitment to the Senate on Friday, so I'm going to ask you again. Do you commit providing the analysis that you used regarding the truck schedules that would show that there will be lower late deliveries? Would you provide that to us by Friday?
I will go back and see what I can.
I have it for you right here. This is what you said. I can read it.
Okay, well, I'll go back and look too, and if it said that, if I have something, I'll send it to you.
I kind of highly doubt that you're going to do that, but
Why would you do that?
because you're not very forthcoming. You also told the Senate our recovery process in
Here.
this should have been a few days and amounted to be a few weeks. Why have days turned into weeks?
Trying to figure that out.
So what I find interesting is that you're supposed to be some logistics expert, right? That's what you've been brought in. That's what people have said. And then all of a sudden you said, okay, we're gonna get these trucks to leave on time, but you didn't focus on getting the mail to the people on time. And then you said that would actually improve, right? You would reduce late deliveries, but the opposite happened. And then you would say that it would take only a matter of days to fix, but that didn't happen. Right?
Mhm.
I know people that work in operations. My wife works in operations, very good at it, and they're looking at data all the time, and seeing what little operational changes can be done to change the flow of whatever you're trying to accomplish, right? So that's what people are questioning your ability, right? I actually talked to a lot of postal workers in Los Angeles. I represent Los Angeles. I was out there, and they said that the delay in the packages, these changes, is causing mail to back up. Where you have baby chickens that are being left in boxes that are going silent, that are starting to rot, food that's starting to rot, flies that are starting to infest the facilities. And they brought up the same fact that they take an oath to get the mail out on time. They're asking, are you living up to that oath, right? I was actually avoiding following other colleagues who called on you to resign, but I do think now it's time for you to resign. Not because you're necessarily this grand political conspiracy, but just the incompetence that we've seen when it comes to the postal service. It's time for you either to step down and have somebody that can run it, or the board of governors should fire you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
He said that.
Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, you are now recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. and
AOC.
thank you, Pastor DeJoy, for coming in and offering your testimony today. Mr. DeJoy, when your announcement in your new position as Postmaster General was announced, there was some folks that were flagging concerns that you would be the first Postmaster General in 2 decades without previous experience reported directly in the USPS. But to be fair, and as you mentioned, you do have extensive career experience in supply chain logistics, correct?
I do.
And in fact, you served as CEO of your own supply chain company, New Breed Logistics, for 30 years, correct?
I did.
And that was up until about 2014 when you merged New Breed Logistics with another company, XPO Logistics, where you also served as CEO for a year and then served on its board of directors until about 2018 when you submitted your resignation, correct? Now, I would like, Madam Chairwoman, I would like to submit to the committee 3 documents for the record. The Postmaster's new entrant report detailing his financial disclosures, publicly available data detailing the USPS top suppliers for the last 3 years, and the recent XPO SEC filings. Now, Mr. DeJoy, you've received, thank you. Mr. DeJoy, you've received about $1.86 million in rental payments from your former company, XPO, correct? Have you taken any meetings with XPO Logistics since becoming Postmaster General? Have you emailed, texted, called, video conferenced, or communicated with your former company, XPO Logistics?
I have many friends that have spoken casually.
That's a yes.
Over the several months. Yes, I found that we have spoken.
Thank you. Now, you started in
Probably.
your role as Postmaster General on June 16th of this year. That's a very big job. Don't need to tell you that. And it has a lot of responsibility. You mentioned meeting with President Trump, Secretary Mnuchin. I can't even imagine how busy that must be. Now, do you keep a daily calendar?
I do.
Have you or your staff made any donations to your calendar since becoming Postmaster General on June 16th?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Do ethics officers at USPS have access to your calendar to screen conflicts of interest?
We have an ethics officer that looks at me.
And they have full access to your calendar?
They will work, yes.
Can we get a commitment from you to submit your calendar dating back to June 16th to this committee?
I don't know. I'll check with
I
council.
don't know.
Well, you
I'll
know,
set a precedent for my calendars of submitting 2 months.
well, according to regulations that we currently have, electronic calendars that are submitted and maintained on USPS computers are agency records. And so can we get your commitment to hand that calendar over to this committee as a matter of court investigation?
I'm new to this. If that is in fact a process that our council says I must comply with, then I will do that.
Thank you. Madam Chairwoman, I would say, you know, the details of this calendar are extraordinarily important to committee investigations, and if we cannot receive them voluntarily, I would recommend consideration of the subpoena for these details. Now, lastly, and selfishly, I represent New York's 14th congressional district. We have written the agency several times regarding accessibility for a ramp in our historic Jackson Heights post office. And I would greatly appreciate return correspondence to make sure that we can ensure that our disabled and elderly constituents can get access to the post office. And thank you very much. I yield my time.
There's a lady over.
She was so nice.
You now recognize Congresswoman.
Thank you, Chairwoman Maloney. While some of our colleagues might use this hearing to continue to gaslight and mislead our constituents, I am here to get to the truth. The American people deserve that. To direct the systemic slowdown of mail delivery during a pandemic within months of a national elections is incomprehensible. At best, these actions represent irresponsible leadership from a novice who has absolutely no business leading a government agency. At worst, they are cruel, unethical, and anti-democratic. And this is certainly no way to repay the 600,000 dedicated and brave employees who risk their lives every day to deliver essential mail. The Postal Service is one of the largest employers of veterans and has one of the most diverse workforces in our country. 40% of postal workers are people of color, and for generations working for the USPS was one of the only living wage jobs accessible to Black and Brown Americans. No doubt many of these families have a personal story of how the USPS job made it possible for them to buy their first home or to send their child to college. Now, it is well documented that many of these same families have been disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and will bear the brunt of any effort to dismantle the USPS. So, Mr. DeJoy, in the interest of time, yes or no, at your direction, the Postal Service is currently under a management hiring freeze? Yes or no?
That management, yes.
For the record, Mr. DeJoy, does the hiring freeze apply to any other category of workers?
No, ma'am.
And you are also seeking to push early retirement, correct?
We've submitted,
Yes or no?
Yes, yes.
Mr. DeJoy, 40,000 postal workers have had to quarantine. Over 6,000 have tested positive, and over 60 have died from COVID-19. Do you know if these numbers are the most accurate and up to date?
83 have died.
83 of them.
And so to be clear, does this mean that you are collecting in real time formal data on COVID-19 and its impact on your workforce?
We have a task force that has complete visibility of everything from PPE to cases in the geographical area, cases within the Postal Service.
So you do have a mechanism whereby you are in real time formally collecting data as to the impact of COVID-19 on your workforce?
Yes, we do.
Okay. In the greater Boston region alone, more than 220 postal workers have contracted COVID-19. A letter carrier in Chelsea, a city in my district, was hospitalized and was told by his doctors that his respiratory system would never be the same. Mr. DeJoy, will you commit to providing this committee with the data that you say you're already formally collecting, disaggregated by congressional district, on COVID-19 related deaths, positive tests, and quarantine of postal workers by Friday? Because this is quite literally a matter of life and death. Can you commit to that? Providing this committee with data disaggregated by congressional district on COVID-19 related deaths, positive tests, and quarantines of postal workers by Friday?
I will look into our ability to provide that to the Congress, and if it's available, we'll certainly do it.
It would certainly be in keeping with the oath that you took and what you've offered here. So I look forward to receiving that by Friday. Now, a few days ago before the Senate, you said the delays in delivery are attributable to, quote, unquote, employee availability in many, many parts of the country. So isn't it true that pursuing a hiring freeze and early retirement when your workforce is already stretched thin by coronavirus would exacerbate delays in the mail? Yes or no?
Pursuing a hiring freeze has to not have anything to do with the craft.
Yes or no? Your workforce is already thin.
No.
Mr. Duncan, were you aware when you selected?
It's not either.
Okay, here you go. Okay. Mr. Duncan? I was just looking to direct myself. Okay. Were you aware when you selected Mr. DeJoy that his company, New Breed Logistics, was determined by the National Labor Relations Board to have acted with anti-union animus? Yes or no?
No.
Were you aware that the Equal Opportunity Commission won a $1.5 million lawsuit against New Breed for sexual harassment and retaliation? Yes or no?
Ooh.
Were you aware that 4 women working for New Breed suffered miscarriages because the company refused to accommodate their request for light duty? Yes or no?
No.
Did you make any attempt to investigate these labor and employment practices before making him the head of one of the largest and most diverse federal workforces? If not, why not?
Yes, we have various background checks. Russell Reynolds hired a DC firm to do an additional background check on him.
Well, I question I question the integrity of that background check if you don't have answers to these questions. And Mr. DeJoy, the hardworking people of the United States Postal Service deserve a better leader. In my opinion, the only thing you should be delivering is your resignation.
Okay.
That's right. Resign to DeJoy.
Armstrong, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm the last one on our side that gets to go, so I'm going to ask probably the most important question of the day. We passed $25 billion from the U.S. House of Representatives yesterday, and if you don't get that money that we passed on Saturday, will the post office be fully operational on November 3rd?
yes, will be fully operational.
Thank you. I sat right there in that chair in April of 2019, the last time that we had a hearing on the post office and postal reforms. And we listened for a day as we heard about the systemic problems,
Voice
all of
is
the
shaking, buddy.
consequences, the years long of losing money, and all the strategic disadvantages that exist in the post office. And something happened. The witness in your seat at that time managed to do something which is unique in this committee. And she drew equal opportunity criticism from both sides of the aisle. Now, just to be clear, you weren't the Postmaster General in April 2019.
No, I was not.
I was on a telephone briefing in April of 2020 when we heard about the impacts of COVID from overtime to your postal workers, contracting to the disease, and where the Democrats of this committee absolutely said that we needed $25 billion or the postal office wouldn't exist. And I do want to say I'm sorry for the 83 people who have died and all of the people in your organization that have been sick. I didn't agree with it then, and I don't agree with it now, but to be clear, you weren't the Postmaster General in April of 2019, were you?
No, sir, I wasn't.
I'd ask unanimous consent
There
to
weren't these
submit the
problems.
memorandum from April of 2019, or 2000.
Without objection.
So then we gotta ask what this is about. And what it's about is driving fear, placing blame,
Bullshit.
and probably most significantly raising
Bullshit.
money. But it's not about raising money for the post office, it's about
We
raising
don't
money
have
for elections.
money.
And I have here DCCC, DNC, members of Congress,
What?
members of Senate, all running ads on the post office. You know what? About saving the post office.
Yeah.
None of these ran in
Bernie's been talking about
2019.
it for
None of these ran in
year.
April 2020. So we're asking for the same thing we asked for in April of 2020, and we've waited until August to
Bernie.
run these things. In
No,
fact,
no,
your
no.
organization had to issue a cease and desist to
Bullshit.
moveon.org, did they not?
I'm not aware. I think I heard something about
Well,
that.
I'm gonna ask unanimous consent to issue
Da,
the
da,
post
da,
office
da.
records on a cease and desist to moveon.org.
Without objection.
I love your organization. I love your carriers. I love your rural
Our
carriers. I was the
organization.
only Republican on this committee to co-sponsor the pre-funding bill on the pension bill. Best thing I've heard you say all day is you're committed to 6-day mail. Because maybe one of the reasons we're not as disproportionately impacted in North Dakota is because we've been going through this for a long time. So that's the best thing I have heard all day long. But I do have a couple questions, and you have talked about making sure the elections and doing all of that. But some of this is based on, I mean, you're talking about votes as they come in throughout the system, right? So North Dakota, 23% of their votes is typically absentee ballot. Ohio, pretty important states, 21% of their ballots is typically absentee. Wisconsin, 28%. Now, I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that those numbers get to 60% this election cycle. Would you agree with that?
They're gonna be a great deal higher.
But you cannot deliver a ballot unless it's requested. If a voter doesn't request it, the post office can't send it.
Well, that's true, but in places where I don't know.
It's
if
true.
State rules, but they're.
And that's what I'm getting to. And so if the ballots track throughout the course of this in their normal theory, rate, that works. But Wisconsin doesn't require you to request a ballot until October 29th, and they're required to be due back on 11/3, on 11/3. The difference between 28% and 60% is about 2.9 million ballots. Ohio, the difference between 21% and 60% is about 2.1 million ballots. And they don't require you to request one until October 31st, and it's due back on the 2nd. North Dakota, my state, who got one of these letters, doesn't
Why aren't they using
doesn't
this
require
time
you
to
to
ask him
postmark your
questions
ballot
about the
until
corruption that's
11/2
going on
for
with
the
Steve
election. And
Mnuchin?
the difference
Like,
between
that's what I'm
23%
wondering
and
here, like,
60%
waste of time.
would be
Like, what are you talking about?
126,320.
God, all these numbers, like.
So my question for you is, how are we going to deal, how do you
They
possibly
confuse
deal
us
with
with
different
math, and
capacity
they didn't
issues?
teach anybody math.
Certainly,
They tried to teach everybody
capacity
fucking
to
algebra
handle
instead.
is not really gonna be the issue. The issue is gonna be, as with the dates that you identify, as we get
Hopes of
closer,
Einstein's.
we've had situations where, when the ballots come in on the same day, they're coming out on the first day. that we need to really scour and look amongst all the other 450 million pieces of mail, find balance and make sure they get delivered and postmarked. And the problem comes in, once we do that, we get it over to the state election boards, and it's what they decide to do with the timing and everything with the ballot, that it is whether the ballot gets counted or not.
And then I just have one last question that actually doesn't relate to elections or anything, but you have seen an increase in packages volume at the UPS, or at the United Postal
You
Service
see, you
since
got
the
it
pandemic
wrong.
began.
UPS.
And we've seen the decrease in first class mail over the course of time. Our law firm went from $30,000 a year to zero. But is there something, are you looking into, because you're making more of a profit on packages, that you may be prioritizing packages versus first class mail?
There's no, there's a lot of judgment used in each location, and one of the things I'm trying to get my hands on, and, but the general intent is what comes in, comes out according to its class, right? So if it's a first class package, it would move, ahead. So there's no specific, direction to do everything.
Stutter it up, buddy.
And, I appreciate your support on.
Why didn't they put a face on cam down? They gave so many allowances, man. Like, what is going on? This is
Really connect with the
a fail.
people in the new economy, and grow some revenue and keep things.
Thank you.
The gentleman's time has expired. Congresswoman Katie, you are now recognized.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Welcome to the People's House, Postmaster General DeJoy. My residents and I don't have a tremendous amount of time, so I really would appreciate straightforward answers to the questions I have. As a lawyer, Mr. DeJoy, I believe that it is incredibly important that all of us citizens, especially public servants leading major federal agencies, are fully aware of and understand fully the law. Do you agree, yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah. Good. Then as an educational exercise and to ensure everyone here is clear on the law, I'd like to start by paraphrasing 18 U.S. Code Clause 1701, which says, whoever knowingly and willfully obstructs the passage of mail shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 6 months or both. I recommend that you and your lawyers familiarize yourself with this passage in particular, but as well as 18 U.S. Code Clauses 595 and 610. So, Mr. DeJoy, let's look at how you came to work for the impeached president. Before this role, you have never worked in the federal government as a public servant, correct?
That's correct.
So clearly you were not hired for your experience or deep understanding of the federal government. So let's see what experience you do have, your resume, so to speak. Before becoming the Postmaster General, you were for a time the Deputy National Fundraising Chairman for the GOP, and since 2016, you donated approximately $1.2 million to this impeached president's campaign and groups that support him. On June 24th, 2020, you bought between $50,000 and $100,000 in what you refer to as, quote, covered calls in the Amazon Corporation. But let's be very clear, Mr. DeJoy, no matter what financial maneuvering you perform to try to hide it, the fact is that you have financial interest in Amazon.
Yeah.
So, Mr. DeJoy, yes or no? Are you aware that Amazon uses the U.S. Postal Service for 40% of its shipping?
I disagree with the premise that I
Yes.
bought stock.
Do you know that they use 40% of its shipping?
I know that there's a lot of shipping with us, yes.
Okay, and I understand that your Amazon called covered calls expires in about October of this year. So you'll have to make a decision regarding this financial interest and may potentially have sensitive information about Amazon's business with the U.S. Postal Service, which may influence that decision. This appears to be a classic example of conflict of interest and insider trading. Yes or no? Will you commit right now to divest any and all financial interest in Amazon to avoid illegal insider trading?
Ma'am, that was a lot of time on an issue that doesn't matter. I don't own any Amazon.
You have financial interest. You can call it whatever you want.
I don't own
It is a
anything
financial
with
interest.
Amazon. You can continue
Until
to.
you do that, your financial interest in Amazon will continue to be problematic and illegal and a conflict of interest. Regarding this matter, you have a simple choice, Mr. DeJoy. You can either resign or divest in that interest. It is very clear that you have vested interest in seeing the president remain in office, and your financial interest in Amazon demonstrates a clear conflict of interest that would be gravely concerning even if you weren't in the process of dismantling the postal service, which you are. And I've heard from a number of carriers, a number of people in my postal service that completely conflict with what you're saying to us in this committee. Over the past few weeks, I've heard from folks that have said that not only are significant delays from changes you've made, but some of the critical medication, again, due to the delays of your actions. I'd like to remind you that unlike in the private sector, Mr. DeJoy, where you serve your own self-interest, your job as Postmaster General is not to serve your own profit schemes on the taxpayer's dime. You are to serve the United States Postal Service, its workers, and the American people. This impeached president, Mr. Joy, you have to realize has a track record of employing crooks who end up in a lot of trouble for their illegal activities, Mr. Joy. Rick Gates, Paul Manafort, Mike Flynn, Michael Cohen, Roger Stone, Steve Bannon. With all due respect, you are not in good company right now. So do the right thing and resign. And I thank the Madam Chair for bringing this to our attention. And please, on behalf of the 13th Congressional District, all we want is for our folks to have access to a qualified Postmaster General.
That's
that
right.
understands the importance of medication, understands that the workers
I'll
need
stand
protection
wrapped
at
in
the
plastic
workplace,
to vote.
and that
You
we are
have
going
two
to actually
shits.
get mail
Give me my
delivered on
post office
time.
back.
Because what we hear on the streets, Mr. DeJoy, is completely the opposite of what you're saying to us.
Correct.
And you've done so much damage in
Lying
such short a period of time
mob
that you've been there.
mentality.
And I do believe there's a conflict of interest, and you need to understand there are legal consequences to that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The gentlelady's time has expired. Congresswoman Porter, you are now recognized. Congresswoman Porter.
Mr. DeJoy, thank you for being with us today. What is the cost of a first-class postage stamp?
55 cents.
Just wanted to check. What about to mail a postcard?
I don't know. No.
What?
You don't know the cost to mail a postcard.
I don't.
What if I want to mail you said 55 cents for a first-class stamp, but what if it's like one of those greeting cards that's a square envelope? Then what is the postage?
I'll submit that I know very little about postage.
Wow.
And what is the weight limit? You are more in the shipping and logistics business. What's the weight limit for priority mail?
70 cents.
And what is the starting rate for U.S. Post Office, USPS priority mail?
The starting rate for what?
USPS priority mail.
Starting weight, 14 ounces.
No, the rate, the price.
I don't know.
Do you know about, within a million or so, can you tell me how many people voted by mail in the last presidential election?
Oh, no, I cannot.
To the nearest 10 million?
What's up?
Is that a no, Mr. DeJoy?
I would be guessing, and I don't want to guess.
Okay, so Mr. DeJoy, I'm concerned, I'm glad you know the price of a stamp, but I'm concerned about your understanding of this agency. And I'm particularly concerned about it because you started taking very decisive action when you became Postmaster General. You started directing the unplugging and destroying of machines, changing of employee procedures, and locking of collection boxes. As a professor, I've always told my students that one of the most important rules in life is to read the instructions. Did you actually read and independently analyze the major overhaul plans before you ordered them to take effect?
Again, I will repeat that I did not order major overhaul plans. The items you identify were not directed by me. I did, and we don't need much analysis to run the trucks to a schedule.
We're spending my time, Mr. Joy. Could you please tell me who did order these changes if U.S. Postmaster General did not? Because these changes have resulted in, and you have said yourself in this
Well, the
hearing.
Postal Service has been around for 250 years. There are plans. There are many executives, almost 30,000 executives in the organization. And there are plans that existed prior to my arrival that will continue, that will implement.
Mr. DeJoy, if you did not order these actions to be taken, please tell the committee the name of who did.
I do not know.
Mr. DeJoy,
What?
did you analyze these plans before they went into
It's not
effect?
a
You as
baseline.
Postmaster General supervise whomever did apparently.
As I've stated numerous times, the plans were in effect and being implemented before I arrived.
But Mr. DeJoy, do you take responsibility for these changes?
I take responsibility from the day I sat in the seat for any service deterioration that has occurred. You're asking about operational changes that go on throughout the whole organization around the country. I don't.
I'm not spending my time, sir. Mr. DeJoy, will you commit to reversing these changes?
No.
Mr. DeJoy, will you commit to, if the independent, I want to switch to conflicts of interest quickly, will you commit that if the Inspector General finds that you committed misconduct with regard to your financial interests in any other company, such as XPO Logistics or Amazon, will you commit, if the Inspector General finds that you committed misconduct, will you commit to them resigning?
I don't believe they will find misconduct, but I don't see why I would commit here right now to resigning for any reason.
Asshole.
Well, you don't think there's any reason that you should ever resign?
No reason that I've heard here today.
Okay, Mr. DeJoy, do you today, this is that you've gone back and forth a bit, I want to ask one final question. Do you own any financial interests, whether options or stocks, covered calls, bought or sold? Do you own today any financial interest in Amazon?
I do not.
The gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman may answer the question in more detail if he wishes. The chair now recognizes the vice chair, Congressman Gomez, for the purpose of a unanimous consent request.
Madam Chair, I'm asking unanimous consent to enter into the record the transcript of Mr. DeJoy's testimony in the Senate on August 21st, where he specifically says, Senator, I will go back and get the truck schedule, the analysis, that design and truck schedule that I directed.
Without objection. The chair now recognizes Congressman Quigley. You are now recognized, Congressman Quigley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, sir, for being so patient. I too am not accustomed this long into being at the end of the questioning, but it does afford us an opportunity to try to put this in a larger picture. You know, one side says blame, the other side says accountability. And doing what you did in the private sector, you recognize accountability. Appreciate the fact that it would be hard to sense that you are accepting it now. You've accepted the responsibility for the delays, but we're still not clear what changes took place and what were yours. Under Ms. Lawrence's questioning, you said you stopped the pilot program, then you stopped everything else. Let me ask you, what in your mind were you stopping besides the pilot program?
I stopped the removal of collection boxes around the country. I stopped the process of reducing hours at postal retail centers, and I stopped the removal of the flat and mail sortation boxes, machines.
So your argument for doing that is that you saw that, your argument for doing that was that it wasn't working, or?
No, they were, it just, I met with the speaker and Senator Schumer, and we just collectively thought about the heightened discussion that was going on around the nation.
And respectfully, sir, why that and not the overtime issues and not the sorting machine? And why did you pick those and not the others, which seem to have pretty dramatic impact? Given given the fact that things didn't go well, wouldn't you want to look back, coming from the private sector, and say, gee, maybe that is impacting us negatively? Was there some other reason you're thinking, well, no, I'm not going to change those?
Not change the truck schedule and
The overtime, the sorting machine?
overtime. I've spent $700 million, and we have spent $700
You
million.
recognize that there are many, including in my district, post office locations which are cutting back on overtime. They're following somebody's order, and you won't mention who that is. So back to accountability, you gotta admit, you own it, right?
How do you know that they're cutting down?
Imagine, let me put it another way. Are you certain that they're not cutting back on overtime?
The direction was given to stop cutting back on overtime in postal retail centers.
When was
I'm
that?
certain? I haven't done an audit yet, but I would believe they're pretty compliant.
Wait, when was that order given? Was that part of the order you just talked about?
I don't know.
Are you saying when you stopped everything else, it included the overtime issue as well? There was no directive to reduce overtime anywhere within the organization. And are you certain that no one was cutting back on overtime?
No, I'm not certain. That's part of the problem at the Postal Service, sir. That's what I'm trying to get my hands around. There is a lot of, and that's why I did the reorganization.
Respectfully, you can imagine though, that
There's a lot of judgment made in local areas that is not.
you're being selective on what you're taking credit for and not. And a cynical person
Yeah,
would
right.
say, you're just trying to avoid going before the regulatory body. If these aren't changes, but when your own, as you say, you're a Republican, when your own party says, did you stop these changes? You said yes. And in your documents, you talk about the fact that there were changes. You can't have it both ways. There were changes.
What?
You seem to have a line there that you don't want to have.
Oh,
because
okay.
you have to go before the regulatory board and you don't want to do that.
It sounds like,
Sounds like what happened.
sounds like a weak deal.
Did anyone in the administration, have you communicated with anyone in the administration since you were considered for this spot about how to operate USPS? No. No one has communicated with you who works in any way with the Trump administration, and you haven't communicated in any way with anyone who works for the Trump
He had to bust
administration
himself.
or the Trump campaign about how to operate the post office.
The only time I communicated with someone in the Trump administration was Secretary Mnuchin when we were negotiating the terms of the $10 billion note. And my discussion in generality was early on in my arrival, and in generalities were that I think that we have some opportunities here, looking to try and grow revenue, improve service, and get some costs out.
And what was the direction the other way?
There was no direction. It's my postal service is mine to run. There was no direction.
My time's expired.
Your time has expired. Before we adjourn, I really want to thank you very much for your time. You've been here all day. And, oh, wait a minute. Is she here? She's virtual. Okay, I saw her earlier. There's one more member of Congress who has waved on from the great state of North Carolina. It's Alma Adams. She was here, but she is now virtual. Alma Adams, you are now recognized. Alma Adams, are you? I assume she's not here with us now. Is she there?
Come on.
It doesn't appear that she's here now. But before we adjourn, I have a few items that I'd like to wrap up with the witness. And also, I would like to grant a ranking member Coma all the time that he may want to consume. And he will get that opportunity once I am finished. I'll move through this quickly in the interest of time. She is here? She is.
Come on, Alma.
So she is getting on. My apologies to you.
Get on, Alma.
Congresswoman Adams, you are now recognized.
I have no idea.
Congresswoman Adams, can you unmute yourself?
Jesus, woman. People get on my nerves with technology. Ronnie, stop. Stop licking yourself. It's crazy. Yeah. I'm trying to fix your technical difficulties. Come on. Poop, poop, poop. Uh-oh. That didn't want to work. Hopefully the front of that page. Oh, they're still trying to get that woman's camera to work. I don't know how it's taken. So.
Mr. DeJoy, you may want to hire the Democrats' computer guy to help deliver the mail on time.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
I apologize for
Funny.
the delay. We were trying to accommodate really from your home state, North Carolina, who wanted to question you. So, Mr. DeJoy, on Friday, Senator Peters asked you if you had discussed the changes to postal operations with President Trump. Mark Meadows, anyone else at the White House, or anyone in the campaign, and you said no. I believe that Mark Meadows has accompanied you to meetings on Capitol Hill, and for the record, do you stand by your statement that you have had no conversations with Mark Meadows about any changes in postal operations?
I'm trying to remember the answer that I gave.
How about the
Mark
truth?
Meadows accompanied Stephen Mnuchin and myself and Senator Schumer and Speaker Pelosi. We were in the room and we started talking about machines but I mean, from the standpoint of that conversation there, Mark Meadows was there after I left. We shut the thing. Then we had a discussion about when we made the decision here at the Postal Service to stop the processes with regard to the sorting machines and so forth. I can't remember when I spoke to him about that, but I called the speaker, I called Senator Schumer. I think we reached out to your office. So in that particular process, we spoke about the stopping that we were doing. With regard to my changes, the changes with regard to the organization and with regard to the truck schedule, I didn't speak to anybody about that.
Have you spoken to anyone else at the White House at any time about changes to postal operations?
No, ma'am, I haven't.
Okay, so if you didn't consult, if you didn't consult with these people, or should we go to my Adams now ready to talk? Alma?
You're
Alma
gonna
Adams,
finish
should
your-
we now go to Alma? Alma, you are
Good
now
God.
recognized. I apologize. Alma Adams, you recognized.
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see you.
Well, thank you very much, and I apologize, some issue on this side, but thank you for convening the hearing. Thank you, Mr. DeJoy, for being here today. I want you to know that my office, sir, has received almost 5,000 calls and emails asking Congress to save the Postal Service. As a matter of fact, the people love the Postal Service. They rate the Postal Service over 91%, more than any candidate I know. I live in the country club. I represented Guilford County for about 50 years, and I'm representing the 12th district in Charlotte now. But the folks I represent can't afford their medication to come late. They can't afford for their ballots to come late, and they can't afford for their voices to be silenced. They need the U.S. Postal Service, and let's be clear, you have been charged with running a postal service, Mr. DeJoy, and not a business. But I've got a photo of my post office in Charlotte up. But Mr. DeJoy, bless your heart, are you getting your mail on time, sir?
I do not know.
Okay, well, I heard you say in your opening that you did not direct the removal of sorting machines and postal collection boxes, and you indicated you didn't know who was or who was doing that. But since you are in charge, I think it would be helpful with all the questions that have been asked for us to know that. But since I'm mentioning this blue box thing, in my district here, the boxes have been covered with trash bags. I don't understand that, and I don't know if you know anything about it, but do you? And there's a photo.
I do not know.
God, dude.
Well, it's in the post office that I go to, and it's the main post office, and if you can find out, I would appreciate that. But I did visit the center yesterday, the Scott Cottrell Post and Distribution Center on Friday, and I was told that the USPS senior management said that you don't all foresee having any influx of election mail going into the election of November 3rd. Is that correct?
I didn't hear the question.
In other words, you're not going to have an influx of election mail going into November. Is that correct?
I don't know how I don't know how anybody would say that. I think as we move to election, we'll have election now, we'll be able to handle it.
Well, 7 machines are missing, have been removed from Charlotte, and we have a demand in North Carolina for of almost 400,000 people requesting their mail-in ballots. In my district, 53,000. So do you know about the sorting machines that are missing in my district?
This is all y'all gotta
I do not know
ask?
specifically about sorting machines missing.
We gotta know more than this. It's all,
You also
always,
said that
always,
you didn't have anything
I don't
to
know,
do
and I
with
don't
that.
remember what time.
And you came
The Senate,
on
how
and
is
you
that
accepted what
possible?
was here.
People,
So,
citizens aren't held to the standard.
you think you can be helpful and at least
So
putting
disappointing to
things
hear.
back? I know you said that that's not something you wanted to do. But considering all of the testimony today, all of the stress that citizens are going through of not getting their mail, not getting their medications, things getting spoiled, insulin, those kinds of things. Do you think you could have a second thought about that, Mr. DeJoy?
First off, we are, as I said, we're all very concerned about each delivery. My goal right now is to have these truck trips filled with mail. We're seeing a great deal of improvement, and I believe we'll be, with regard to the transportation, we will be in much better shape over the next week.
Let me stop you right here because I don't want to know about that part. I wanted to know if you had any second thoughts. I certainly hope that you would. So let me ask you about the, on August 18th, you announced an expansion of the Postal Service Leadership Task Force. On the 21st, the Board of Elections announced a bipartisan mail committee. Is this initiative different from the task force that you announced on the 18th, Mr. DeJoy?
No, to be clear, we had a task force. There was a task force at the Postal Service before I arrived. After review, I expanded the task force to include the union leadership. And then the board, we were at a board meeting, decided to just to show the connectivity of the board to the management team, to 650,000 workers, that we're all to represent to the American public, that we're all together on guaranteeing that we would have a safe and secure election.
Congresswoman, your time has expired. Congresswoman, your time has expired. I will allow Mr. DeJoy to elaborate more if you'd like, but your time has expired.
I just want to know if he would allow you and the ranking member to appoint a staffer to participate at least as an observer on this committee.
So I'm gonna let them reply in writing because our time is expired right now. But I think that's a good request, and I'm sure he'll give it good consideration. Now, Mr. DeJoy, so if you did not consult with these people about the operational changes, we are also interested in who you did consult with before making these changes. The unions have raised concerns that they were not adequately consulted, for example. So my question is, will you provide this committee with a complete list of the people you did consult with about the changes? People inside the Postal Service, at other agencies, and any outside parties in the government or in the private sector. Will you provide us with that complete list?
Man, the extent of, I can tell you right now, I discussed this with all the vice presidents and the COO and of the existing management team when I arrived, and the VPs around the area. There's no big complex problem solving that's necessary to try and get your trucks to run on a schedule. It's designed to take the mail from
I
the
did remove
processing
600
plant
machines,
to the
my
delivery
friend.
unit so it gets on time. So that was basically it. I had an OIG audit that was delivered to me. You have access to, it'll show you the damage that was being done to the organization by not running truck trips on time. And I asked the management team, probably 10 vice presidents, to put together a plan to run your trucks on time. About 3 weeks later, they came, they said, we're ready to go, and we went.
Who's they?
That's the extent of the analysis.
Who's they?
So I'm going to ask you again for the people you consulted
Thank
with.
you.
That was
I ask it voluntarily, and I'd like it in writing. But if you refuse, then we will be forced to consider obtaining it by a subpoena. Mr. Duncan, I would now like to turn to you. Mr. Duncan, are you still with us, Mr. Duncan?
Yes, Congresswoman.
Thank you. On Friday, Senator Rosen asked Mr. DeJoy to provide the transcripts or minutes of any closed, non-public board meetings from this year. And Mr. DeJoy said he did not have the authority to do that. But you're the chairman of the board. Will you commit to providing this committee with the transcripts or minutes of any closed, non-public board meetings from this year, including in particular the emergency meeting you just held?
Oh, get it.
Madam Chairwoman, I commit that I will work with our council to provide everything legally possible for the committee.
Well,
You
that's
are
great,
long.
but if you have any other lingering concerns that the council may not provide all the information, would a friendly subpoena help?
I think we can work this out. The minutes are something that we have available to us.
Well, I thank both of you for testifying. It's been a long day. Thank you very much. And I now recognize the distinguished ranking member for as much time as he may consume for his final thoughts and words.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. I'd like to first begin by asking unanimous consent to submit for the record this Politico article that just came out, basically saying that this committee hearing was a waste of time. Next.
Yeah, because y'all don't ask proper
I want to thank
questions.
you. As we've seen with the picture that I showed of Representative Fazio, Obviously a photo op to try to get more tweets and likes and to fire up their base who's not fired up about their presidential candidate, apparently. It's also an opportunity to raise money, as we saw with Representative Armstrong, with his mountains of evidence, where members of the Democrat Party are fundraising off the post office. Our suspicion was that the majority had little more than conspiracy theories and baseless, frankly irresponsible charges to make against you. And we've seen that. And our suspicion was that the Democrats have no interest in doing anything to address the real issues that affect the Postal Service. We heard that today. They provided the Postal Service $25 billion because, quote, it's a worthwhile institution. I agree it's worthwhile, indeed vital, but it is unsustainable unless we help implement reform. Mr. DeJoy has made it clear the steps he has taken since becoming Postmaster General are good faith attempts to improve his organization. I would love to say that all the time we've spent over the past several days has moved the needle in a positive way. I'm not sure I can, but hopefully the time Republicans have spent talking about the real issues will provide momentum to lead to something positive. Hopefully the time Republicans have spent shining the light on partisan Democratic attacks have helped Americans understand the real situation.
Yeah, I didn't.
If the majority is serious about fixing the long-standing financial and operational challenges, then we stand ready to work together. And to do that, Congress needs to have a working relationship with the Postal Service. This week has been the opposite of a partnership, and I fear has done long-term damage to the nation's trust in one of its most esteemed, important, and citizen-serving federal entities.
Yeah, get rid of
And I also fear the Democrats' conspiracy theories have risked Americans' faith in the elections in a way the Russians and Chinese could only dream of. There is no way the process we have followed can produce results that will help the post office be better and serve all Americans. We can do that. And I hope to work with my colleagues to assure the post office is around for decades and centuries to come. Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentlemen, and in closing, I want to thank our witnesses for their testimony, and I want to commend all of my colleagues for participating in this important conversation. With that, and without objection, letters from organizations in support of the bipartisan legislation passed by the House on Saturday shall be a part of the hearing record, along with articles and letters from across the country depicting the effects of the delays on veterans, the elderly, the chronically ill, small businesses, farmers, and ordinary Americans who depend on the mail to be delivered. Without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days within which to submit additional written questions for the witnesses to the chair, which will be forwarded to the witnesses for their response. And I ask our witnesses to respond as promptly as you are able. This hearing is adjourned. Thank you.
All right. Well, I got all the paper waxed out that I can. And I get another roll. They were badly sticking together and tearing apart. I kind of need to learn a different system. But it's a fact. But and I have a few other pages I want to put in this section of the book before I actually, this is Bikini Island. I don't know, I'm gonna find these old papers. I decided to make a section of this 600-page book with some of these old papers. Instead of putting them on individual boards, nobody cares about them but me. So it's like, well, 1947, y'all. Look at that. Look how pretty it's stood. Although I can't bend it in half, it'll crack. But I can figure out a way to get it on there. So this, titled Unknown Beauty, as explorers called this peak, was photographed but was not climbed. It is one of the almost inaccessible mountains which form the southern wall of the Himalayas. The peaks which nearly make up this wall are nearly all unexplored because there are no passes or passages whatsoever between them. But as we know, this was before it had been touched. But as we know, this is the one where they have the traffic jam of climbers that climb all the way up to get to the top. And they have to come all the way back down, and they wait hours just to get to the top. It's crazy. But this was before. This is I like the visual of this. The soundproof room. Dude sitting, chilling in the middle, like suspended on a screen. Huh. Cool looking. That. Grand Canyon. It's beautiful. Because I just want to write poetry or lyrics or just thought processing on paper. And I wanted some pretty paper to do it. So I've made my own semi book, and I got paint pens in the mail, and I'm gonna do it. It's a ticker tape parade, which nobody even knows what that is anymore. That's a margarine on 2 more of my beer commercial things, and then I thought this is pretty cool. It's so crazy. It's Australia. It's in Australia. Sadly cool. Oh, and then there's one that I have a piece of earth, and I wanted to stick that on top of it. I don't know how to color an earth, apparently. So these are to be done. So it's streaming for 1 hour. Oh, that didn't go too bad. It's not the same one I was watching earlier today, but whatever. Oh, I'm gonna eat some dinner. In stream, yo. Sorry about that.